Hi, have you ever wanted some smooth writing that could impress a person, but you realize your writing's actually a train wreck that needs to be fixed by someone else? Well, let me help you with that with today's informational writing skills video on transitions and writing mechanics. This is our proficiency rubric for the video. You can pause to read all 4 sections, but hopefully by the end of this video you can say that you are proficient or highly proficient in these skills. Our agenda today is transitions, punctuation, capitalization, and spelling. And quick disclaimer, I'm not going to explain some concepts in detail to keep this video short. So if you want to look up more information on a specific concept, you can research it after this video. Let's talk about transitions really fast, and transitions matter because they are bridges between your ideas. They help your readers follow your thought process, and they create smooth, logical connections between paragraphs. So there are transitional words and phrases you could use. For example, if you want to add information in another paragraph or sentence or idea, you can use transitional words like furthermore, moreover, and additionally, or you can use phrases like in addition to that, or not only that, but also. If you want to show contrast between a few different ideas, you can use transitional words like however, nevertheless, or although, or you can use phrases like on the other hand, or despite that fact. If you want to demonstrate sequence or things in order, you can use transitional words like first, next, or subsequently, or use phrases like as the next step or following that. And finally, if you want to conclude some ideas in another paragraph or sentence, you can use transitional words like finally, lastly, ultimately, or in conclusion, or all things considered. If you don't have transitions in your writing, it's going to feel like a car that keeps stopping and starting, and it's very choppy and very uncomfortable. So make sure if you have writings with transitions, it's going to feel smooth for your reader, and they're going to be able to glide through your reading really fast and feel like it was a very comfortable ride. Punctuation is one of our first writing mechanics we're going to talk about. Let's talk about commas first because they're very common and have lots of rules. One of the big rules for commas is to use them to separate independent clauses. For example, I wanted to go to the game, comma, but I had too much homework. You've got 2 complete thoughts here, and we're going to separate them, but keep them in the same sentence with a comma and a conjunction word like but in this case. You can use comma and, comma for to also separate other independent clauses. You can separate items in a list with commas like we bought chips, comma, soda, comma, candy, comma, and balloons. You can also set off introductory phrases such as after the final bell rang, comma, the students rushed out the door. After the final bell rang is kind of extra information that's not part of the real sentence, so we're separating it from the true sentence. Just make sure to avoid comma splices. For example, I love pizza, comma, it's my favorite food, period. This is a comma splice because you don't want to separate 2 complete thoughts with just a comma. So instead of doing this comma splice, you can say I love pizza because it's my favorite food and take out the comma entirely. You can say I love pizza, semicolon, it's my favorite food. A semicolon is just a comma with a little dot above it. It's kind of like a period, but with less of a final pause. Or just use a period and say I love pizza, it's my favorite food. Just be careful with your comma usage. Then we've got hyphens, which are these little tiny dashes. You can use them for a few different things. You can connect compound adjectives. I don't have nouns on here, but you can do that too. For example, we have well-known author and state-of-the-art computer. So well-known together means famous, so we don't want to have them look separate like they mean different things, so we need to keep them together by using this hyphen. Same thing with state-of-the-art. We're not using state and the rest of these words as separate ideas. These are all together one idea, kind of being the newest, flashiest, nicest thing, so they need to be kept together with hyphens. And most people also use hyphens for linking number ranges. For example, pages 10-15 or from 1989 to -2007. Parentheses and em-dashes most of the time can be used the exact same way, but there is one main exception for em-dashes. So an em-dash is just 2 hyphens put together. And you can use one em-dash in a sentence if you're trying to break the flow of the sentence to draw attention to specific information. Usually a dramatic change or reveal. See how I used a em-dash in an example about a hem-dash? But if you want to see an em-dash in action besides this, this sentence says, I was ready to leave until she walked in. So we've got our em-dash breaking the flow of the sentence to draw attention to the important part until she walked in. It shows a dramatic change, and so we want to make it feel more dramatic with that em dash before it. But usually people use parentheses or two em dashes interchangeably to interrupt a sentence with extra information we don't technically need. For example, let's say we have this sentence, my brother is coming to visit. Maybe we want to add extra information, so we can use em dashes to add it. So my brother, the one who lives in Chicago, is coming to visit. So now we have this extra info about them being in Chicago, but we're going to separate it with em dashes because we don't really need it. And notice you can take out the em dashes and use parentheses instead. So like I said here, you can use them either way, whichever one you like more. And finally, we have ellipses. Those are the 3 dots. There are 2 main reasons to use ellipses. One, to show that words and sentences were left out of a quote that you used. For example, the passage says, do not fear, ... Doritos are life. This is showing us that there was more to this quote, but we didn't want to use all of it, so we deleted part of the quote and then just replaced that deleted section with the 3 dots or the ellipses. The other reason people use ellipses is to show a pause or uncertainty. For example, we have, well, ... I guess we could try it your way. So we're showing a pause in thought. Or we can use it like, we could, but I'm not sure, ... And here we're showing that we don't know how we feel, so we're going to kind of trail off for a minute. Just be careful using ellipses for formal writing. It is imperative that you only use the 3 dots when you're using ellipses in formal writing. If you want to use more ellipses or more dots, wait until you're writing a text to someone or doing a creative story. If you don't have punctuation in your writing, that's like giving someone a map with no directions on where to go. They're going to be lost and confused. So make sure to add punctuation in your writing and give your reader that roadmap so they can see where are they starting, where are they pausing, and where are they stopping, so they know exactly where they're supposed to go and how to get there. Then we have capitalization for writing mechanics. We'll go over a few rules, such as first word of sentences. This should go without saying. Anytime you start a sentence, the first word should be capitalized. Same thing with the word I. You should always capitalize when you're using I referring to yourself, like when I'm tired, I'm doing homework. Make sure you capitalize that I. Most of you should know that titles and subtitles of work should be capitalized, but note, there are some words you don't have to capitalize in a title. If you see To Kill a Mockingbird right here, notice that the A in the middle is not capitalized, and you'll also see The Catcher in the Rye, in and the are not capitalized. But notice the in the beginning is capitalized. So the rule here is if you're using these tiny connecting words like a and the of in the middle, they do not have to be capitalized, but if you're using them as the first word of the title, they should be capitalized. Something else you should know that names and titles before names should be capitalized, but not if you're using them as descriptors. For example, we spoke with Dr. Thompson about the new policy and the doctor explained it. So in this case, doctor is being used as a title or part of the name. So Dr. Thompson is how we're referring to this person by name, so it needs to be capitalized here. However, at the end of the sentence, we have the doctor. So we're not using it as a name here, we're using it to describe who that person is. So when you're using it as a descriptor of someone, do not capitalize. And one of our last capitalization rules is that months and holidays are capitalized, but not seasons. For example, we do a barbecue on July 4th for Independence Day, and then another one in the fall. So notice July is a month, so that is capitalized, and Independence Day is a holiday, so that is capitalized. But fall is just a season, so it is not capitalized. Same thing with summer, spring, and winter. We do also have a weird rule where if you're talking or using a quote from someone and you're using a full sentence from the quote, you will capitalize the first word, just like you would in any other regular sentence, capitalizing the first word. But if you're using a quote as part of a full sentence, so for example, he described the movie as, quote, boring and predictable, we're not using boring and predictable as a full sentence, just a phrase that we're combining into our actual sentence. So in that case, you would not capitalize. If you do not have proper capitalization in your writing, that's kind of like a boring road trip where there's no road signs or no interesting things to look at, just grass and sky. You don't want to bore your audience or make them think there's nothing important in your writing. So make sure to capitalize the things we talked about. Those are kind of like your road signs, telling people to slow down or pay attention to something that might be important. And finally, we're going to talk about spelling, mostly how to react to spelling errors. Now, most people like to use spell check tools, but there's a few instances I would say be careful because spell check is not always perfect. Sometimes your spelling will be correct for namely anything that's uniquely spelled, like unique name spellings or unique title spellings. So if someone spells like cats with a K or tries to spell McKinsley with a bunch of extra letters, spell check might not know that that's correct and will tell you it's wrong, but it's not. And sometimes spell check also misses words that you're using incorrectly, like if you're using the wrong homophone. For example, maybe you're using the wrong to, or the wrong there, or the wrong heard. Spell check is only looking at the word itself, so it's not going to pick up that you used it incorrectly. So this is why you don't want to rely on spell check all the time. One way to help you with that is to read your writing backwards. This may feel weird, but the reason you do that is because your brain automatically predicts the next word when you're reading normally. So if you read backwards, your brain can't predict the next word, so it has to pay closer attention, which means you can pay close attention to any errors. And finally, just make sure you proofread your writing a few times because even I, as an English teacher, have missed some errors once or twice when looking at my reading or my writing. And finally, you can take a pause and look at this list of commonly misspelled words. A lot of these are words that many people misspell, but if there are other words you misspell frequently, sometimes it's good to just memorize how to spell it so you can do better in the future. When you have bad spelling in your writing, it's like driving with the car that actually you can't drive with because it's broken. There's so many things wrong with it. Your message is not going to get across if your reader can't even drive through your text because your spelling is atrocious and there's too many things to fix. So make sure that your spelling is fixed so you're giving your reader a nice, drivable car to drive through the message of your writing and understand everything without breaking down in the middle of your text. Now let's look at an example of a paragraph and how we can change those things: transitions, punctuations, capitalization, and spelling. So here's our paragraph. I went to the park. It was sunny. I saw a lot of people. Some were running, some were walking. The water fountain, which was broken last week, had been fixed. I saw a well-known artist painting near the trees over there. I talked to Dr. Miller about the new trail, and she said it opened on Wednesday. My dad said they're going to build a playground next. So we're going to quickly go through these. So one thing you'll notice is the first three sentences are kind of choppy and short. So we're going to make two of them one sentence. So now we're going to say it was sunny, comma, and I saw a lot of people. So this can be a little bit smoother to read through. You'll notice in the second sentence we've got a comma splice. We've got some were running, comma, some were walking. So let's change that comma splice by turning this into a semicolon. Remember, it's like a period, but with a little bit more of a pause, usually used when two sentences are similar. We have next the water fountain, but we don't know where that is in your visual. So we're going to add a little transition, like a visual transition, and say at the center, comma, the water fountain. So now we have an idea of where we're looking. And then we see which was broken last week is not a phrase we need because then it says had been fixed. So we can tell it was already broken. So let's put some M dashes around this to show this phrase is not necessary, but we're keeping it in there. So here's some M dashes to separate it. And then we see that we've got well-known down here. And if you remember, well-known together means famous, which makes more sense next to artist. So we are going to add a hyphen there to combine those two words together. Then we see that over there is kind of vague, and if we've already talked about looking at the center, maybe we need to do another visual transition, so we're going to say on the left. Next, we see that doctor is in front of Miller, so it's being used as a title, which means this does need to be capitalized, so we're going to change this to capital D, doctor. And then we see that this is a long sentence that we could combine with a comma, especially because we have an and here already. So we're going to add that little comma to separate these two complete thoughts. And then we might notice, well, Wednesday is actually spelled incorrectly, so we're going to change that to the real spelling, Wednesday. And then we see that my dad is capitalized. Remember, we're saying my dad, so we're using it as a descriptor, so we're going to decapitalize dad. And then the last thing we notice is that we have the wrong there right here. So instead of T-H-E-I-R, we need T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E. All right, and that's transitions in writing mechanics and how to make your writing smoother and nicer. Hopefully you feel like this was helpful to make you more proficient or highly proficient in these skills, and that I've given you the tools to help fix your own writing car, and now you can have smooth writing that impresses everyone around you. So go make some smooth writing, friends, and I will see you in the next video.